So, today we're in South Africa, and our story begins with a man named Fritz Yubert. Now, depending on who you asked, Fritz was either a hard-working businessman trying to rebuild his life, or a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. By 2019, Fritz was 44 years old and living alone on a rural homestead near the coastal town of Gonubie. At first glance, his life looked fairly ordinary. He owned property, he knew a lot of people in the community. And if you looked at his social media, you'd probably see a man surrounded by friends, laughter, and weekend gatherings. But appearances can be deceiving. Because only a few years earlier, Fritz had lost almost everything. His marriage had fallen apart, his business had collapsed, his finances were in ruins. And according to many people who knew him, alcohol and drugs were becoming a bigger and bigger part of his life. The thing about Fritz is that he seemed desperate to become someone else, someone respected, someone admired, someone important. And that's where Anelli Hoana enters our story. Anelli was almost the complete opposite of Fritz. He was known as calm, intelligent, and deeply respected within the local community. He had a successful business, a loving fiancé, 3 young children, and a reputation that many people trusted. The two men became friends, then business partners. And before long, Anelli and his family had actually moved into Fritz's homestead while they worked together on an ambitious project. On the surface, everything appeared fine. But beneath that friendship, something wasn't right. Former friends would later describe Fritz as increasingly unpredictable. Some spoke about arguments, others spoke about threats. And over time, Fritz became obsessed with ideas that seemed detached from reality. He began referring to himself as the Chosen One, a title that would later take on a chilling meaning. Then came the night of November 29th, 2019. Earlier that day, Fritz and Anelli had received positive news about their business venture. Naturally, they decided to celebrate. A few drinks became many drinks. Conversations became arguments. And as the night wore on, tensions began to rise. At some point, Anelli told Fritz that he planned to move back home and spend more time with his family. For most people, that wouldn't be a problem. For Fritz, it appears it was. During the early hours of the morning, Fritz sent messages asking people to come to his property. When several local farmers arrived, they were met with a bizarre scene. Anelli was on his knees. Fritz was pacing around him, and he was demanding that people film what was happening. Fritz repeatedly refers to himself as the Chosen One. He calls Anelli Satan. He speaks about kings, destiny, and God. And throughout it all, Anelli remains remarkably calm, almost as though he's trying to stop the situation from getting any worse. Unfortunately, it didn't work. At some point, Fritz violently attacked his friend. The assault was so severe that Anelli would never recover. When police finally arrived, they found a murder scene, terrified family members, and Fritz armed with a rifle. Moments later, a confrontation broke out. A shot was fired, and by sunrise, both men were dead. One had lost his life trying to protect his family. The other had become consumed by his own anger, instability, and delusions. And perhaps that's what makes this case so tragic. Because unlike many true crime stories, there was no elaborate mystery, no hidden mastermind, no complex conspiracy. Just a man who spent years losing control of his life, until eventually he lost control of himself. And in the process, he destroyed the lives of everyone around him. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.